Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today is former Burlingame Mayor in 2020 and currently on the Burlingame City Council, where she has served since 2015, the pride of Notre Dame University, South Bend, Indiana, and a former U.S. Army captain, Councilwoman Emily Beach. Emily Beach, thanks for joining me this evening.
Mark at the Mic, what an honor to be with you.
Mark at the Mic. Oh, boy. So, Emily, you were mayor, Burlingame mayor in 2020 during the pandemic. And that's really when I first met you. You were visiting merchants around town and asking if there was anything you could do for them. And I have to tell you, I thought that was pretty cool. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Everybody that was working in the grocery stores and the pharmacies, they were front line of this pandemic as much as the healthcare workers. So you kept us going. So thank you for your service.
What a time to be mayor, huh?
It sure was.
Yeah, pretty challenging.
Sure was. Yeah. Although I don't think it really held a candle to some of the hard duty that school trustees had to deal with that year. That was tough duty too.
Definitely an historical year.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's see. In 1996, you graduated from Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana, correct?
Yes, sir.
And enlisted upon graduation, you enlisted into the Army. Is that right?
I was in the Army. I guess the term would be commissioned, because when you go through the ROTC program, you're commissioned as a
second
officer.
Lieutenant?
Yep, as a second lieutenant, as opposed to enlisting.
Right. Yep. So then you come out in 2000, and you're enlisted into the Army. Was that sort of a plan during college to do that?
It definitely was, because the Army had given me a scholarship to be at Notre Dame. That's how I paid for school, which was really magnificent opportunity coming out of high school. And so for every year that the Army paid for, you owed a year on active duty. So I knew I was headed into at least 4 years on active duty.
Because they paid for 4 years at Notre Dame?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty crazy. That's awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
They even let me go abroad my sophomore year. I got to go to Spain and live with a Spanish-speaking family, and then I came back my junior year and did boot camp that summer. It was just a great education, both ROTC and Notre Dame. I felt very lucky.
Did you ever think of making the Army a career?
I think I went into it with an open mind, but honestly, Mark, I grew up in western Massachusetts in a town about half the size of Burlingame, and the kids I started nursery school with were the friends I graduated high school with. And I really valued that kind of stability in my life. And my husband and I met in the Army, and we talked about it. We both really enjoyed our time in the Army, but as we were sort of nearing the end of our 4 years on active duty, we had some soul-searching conversations about whether or not we wanted to have a military lifestyle, which would move us every 2 years around the globe, be deployed separately at times. And I think we just both made a decision we wanted to sort of build community roots. It was a hard decision, though, because we were getting great feedback that there was a bright future, in that career. And it is a career of service, and I loved it. But I think we made the right decision for us.
Apparently so. I think so. Great.
But thank goodness some people do choose to do it as a full-time career.
So let's see. It says Army parachutist, right? Serving in Saudi Arabia,
Yes.
South Korea, and Texas.
Yes.
How many jumps did you?
5 jumps. In fact, the nickname for a person with 5 jumps is a 5-jump chump. That means you're certified, and thank goodness I never had to do it again. I am terrified of heights. So it was one of the reasons I volunteered to go to airborne school, is to face that fear. And I
love it.
It was pretty awesome to be able to do that.
Okay, so you grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, right? About half the size of Burlingame. You went to college at University of Notre Dame, a little time in Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and Texas. How the heck did you discover Burlingame and decide to settle here?
Well, I owe the California chapter to marrying Duff Beach. And my friends in Massachusetts said, "You're marrying a man named Duff Beach from California." They were like, surfer dude, right? Was that?
So he was from California?
Yeah, yep. He grew up here in the Bay Area. I was determined, after having grown up in Massachusetts, went to college in Indiana, and then having experienced warmer weather, I wanted no part of winter anymore. So my criteria was anywhere that's warm. And his whole extended family was sort of out in Northern California. And Duff was attending law school in San Francisco at UC Hastings, which is now, a San Francisco college of the law. And so we kind of settled in San Francisco. We lived there for about 7 years when we were just in a little 1-bedroom apartment, saving up. And then our children were both born in San Francisco. And when Kate, our oldest daughter, was about to start kindergarten, we had to sort of make a decision. We were committed to public schools. We probably would have been driving one kid across town in San Francisco the way the school lottery system went, and we started to think very carefully about quality of life and public schools and the suburbs, and we came and discovered Burlingame. We rented for a little while here. We just fell in love with it, and we bought a home, and we have never looked back.
And what year did you buy the home?
Let's see.
Or what year did you move to Burlingame? Let's put it that way.
We moved here. I'm just doing this by the age of my second kid. January 2008.
Yeah.
We moved to Burlingame.
And then you totally immersed yourself into activities and organizations in the city.
Yes, in Burlingame at first. At the time, my kids were really little when we moved, and I was taking a few years off from, I had worked in the business world down in San Jose. I had done some other things in San Francisco. The kids came along. I wanted to take, 2 or 3 years if we could swing it to focus on them when they were little. So I started volunteering in the nursery school at First Presbyterian Nursery School. And then when my kids got into Lincoln Elementary, I really dove into the Education Foundation, BCE Foundation, because it was kind of a skill set. Having been in sales and having done some business stuff, I thought I could bring some fundraising skill and acumen to the board, and just really dove into that with all my heart, because at the time there were huge cuts in the public schools. You remember that campaign, the signs around town, "Game On"?
Absolutely.
Right? There was going to be like they were going to lay off tons of teachers if we didn't raise $500,000 in 2 or 3 months, and that really inspired me to recognize how public education funding really wasn't what it needed to be, and what could we do locally to make things more equitable for not just kids at Lincoln Elementary, but kids at McKinley and kids at Washington. And the foundation was a great experience for me, and I met some of my closest friends that I'm still my closest friends
I bet.
with. So
Yeah.
When you're in the trenches volunteering,
The BC is a great Burlingame organization, foundation. Great.
Yep. Yeah, and I served 2 years as president, 4 years on the board, and it was really a transformational leadership experience. I learned so much running a volunteer organization. So,
okay, so you were elected to City Council in 2015 and reelected in 2019. Is that correct? And of course, you were the mayor in 2020. What was your motivation for running for council?
When I was rolling off the BCE board, I had some interaction because we had started during that era the Spirit Run. Remember, there was a community fun run.
It started over at Intermediate, I think.
Right, Burlingame Intermediate School. And so I had some interaction with the city council. Occasionally we'd have to go and promote things or work with them to close the streets. And I started paying more attention to what was going on in city government. As I was rolling off the board, I started attending more of those meetings because it was clear that there were going to be some council seats that were going to be open rather than just incumbents rerunning. And the more I dove in and listened and figured out what city council was doing and how impactful that work was, I became very interested in continuing kind of a different kind of community service rather outside of the schools. I really was interested particularly that we were going to be updating our general plan for the first time in like 40 years, which is normally done every 5 or 10 years, but figuring out how the community was going to grow over the next 20. So having a seat at the table for shaping the community in terms of housing that would come in, development, parks, that was really interesting to me. And then the other thing, part of my heart and soul, passion projects, was making walking and biking safer in Burlingame. I am an avid active transportation and public transportation enthusiast, so helping build more transportation infrastructure for the community was something that was really important to me. So those were the two big reasons.
Okay, and so what has been one of your major accomplishments while on City Council?
Oh, we have done so much as a team. I mean, we've had a lot of stability in our City Council. In fact, in the 8 years that I've served, just this past year we welcomed Peter Stevenson onto the council. But prior to that, the five of us were working together for 7 years, and that adds a lot of productivity because people have some continuity. And I think I'm really proud of what we did with the general plan and creating more housing and more affordable housing, putting the right policies in place so that developers could do what they needed to do and do it thoughtfully in a way that would work for Burlingame, embracing more housing around our rail hubs and putting policy levers to make sure that there'd be affordability. I could tell you the statistics, but we did the right thing before the state came and shoved anything down our throat. So I think that's a really big deal. I would love to tell you about some of the transportation. Well, maybe I'll pause there, and there's 3 things I'd like to.
Let's go for it. Let's talk. I wanted to talk about obstacles and challenges that you've had while on council, but go ahead and talk about some of the great things that have been achieved. I appreciate the question. I think the transportation infrastructure. I mean, early on, I had an opportunity, and I had some mentors that helped me run for a board of directors at the county's transportation authority, which oversees the sales tax for the entire county. This is about $100 million a year that comes into the county for transportation infrastructure, and helped bring, I think, over $4 million for pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure to our city. That's been exciting. To work on the Broadway separation of the railroad tracks from the roadway. We are now about 83% funded. That was unachievable. Not unachievable. We really had high hopes, but it's so expensive to get that done. The Transportation Authority has put forth over $20 million, but they're going to commit to about half, and then helping work on advocacy and grants and letters of support. That's been rewarding. And then El Camino Real, if we want to talk about that later, but Brownrigg and I were on a committee, a stakeholder committee with Jen Pfaff from the Historical Society, and how could we reimagine El Camino Real in a way that could keep the legacy of our beautiful tree grove but fix the infrastructure. I mean, that's going to start happening next year. So those are some really big wins in transportation infrastructure. And probably the thing in addition to those, it was passing an accelerated minimum wage. I'm really proud of having been a part of, and that was part of the challenge, and
too.
that's about, $15 an hour in Burlingame?
Yeah, right now, the statewide minimum wage, the state had created a pathway for all cities to get to $15, but some cities had accelerated that. San Mateo led the way. Not every city in San Mateo County accelerated it, but Burlingame in 2020, when I was mayor, I worked to try to get it at a subcommittee prior to that and was unsuccessful. But in 2020, when you're mayor, you have the power of the agenda. I put it on. It was a very contentious debate. It was tough. Lots of people had strong opinions, valid ones, but we eventually passed it 3-2 and made a difference. So, folks at our lowest wage workers in town went from $13 an hour to $15 on January 1st. And then we have a CPI escalator, and it's made a difference. I work with low-income people every day in my day job, and that $1 an hour makes a big difference.
It creates a difference.
Yeah.
You bet.
So those are 3 things.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the buzz going on around Burlingame. How about some updates on the town square, Top Golf, the Bayfront, and how are the hotels doing? I know they're a big supplier for the tax base. Are they getting back up to, they filling the hotels back up, or we still have a lot of vacancies out there? Just a little
what's going on in Burlingame?
Yeah.
Well, no moss grows on the stones in Burlingame, I'll tell you. Our city doesn't stop moving and changing and evolving, and I believe for the better. So, let's start with the hotels. That was the last question you asked. I think the hotels are doing better. According to our budget projections, there's still at a loss compared to where we were at their height pre-pandemic. The last best year was I believe it was 2018, 2019, that fiscal year. By 2019, 2020, when the pandemic hit in the last quarter or two, we were just devastated. So, overnight, the city lost about a third, $25 million of our sort of general fund. That's pretty devastating. We weathered that storm because we had really strong fiscally prudent reserves, but that means the hotels were just suffering for that. And we expect them this year. I mean, we project this in partnership with the hotels. They might be back at around 60% of where they were pre-pandemic. Because there's just not as much business travel. So much has changed with the way we can Zoom and do Microsoft Teams and do video conferencing, but we're optimistic. This is such a desirable and important place for people to collaborate in person. It'll continue coming back.
I hope so. Yeah, I talked to a couple of the general managers from the hotels, and they were saying one of the issues is there's not that many conventions in San Francisco anymore.
Yeah.
And they would get the overflow crowd to come down to Burlingame and rent the rooms in Burlingame at the hotels, and that's just not happening. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, San Francisco has a world of challenges, and
that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole nother story. Yeah. But some of the other buzz you were asking me about.
What about the town square house progress? It looks like they're beginning to put the facade on now.
Yeah, it's really exciting. The exterior facade is going in on the office space. The historic post office is being restored now.
Yep.
I really hats off to our current mayor, Michael Brownrigg. This is one of his passion, visionary things that he has been talking about for years, and really helped lead the effort to make sure that not only do we have the historic post office redeveloped, but also a signature community space with the town square. So I think it's great that we're well underway. It should be open. I mean, if you never know with construction, but Park Road should be winding up construction by next year around this time, or towards the end of 2024, and the town square, once the major part of the construction is able to, the staging area can move off of where the old parking lot was with the drive-through mailboxes. That's when we can begin construction. I don't know. Have you seen the plans? They're really magnificent.
They're amazing.
It's going to be magnificent. It's going to be a real community gathering space. We're going to have places for our farmers market, a water feature, trees, concerts probably. It'll be beautiful. There'll be some restaurants, retail, and a really vibrant community gathering space.
So just for clarification, when would you think it would be finally completed? At the end of 2024 or into 25?
I think it remains to be seen. We're hoping by the end of 2024. The town square part might stretch a little bit longer.
Right.
I just don't know how exactly the staging, the Park Road development project, and they put forth, the developer, Saris Regis, put forth about $2 million to help fund that town square, which is really magnificent as a partner. They should be finished towards the end of 2024. So
Great. Okay. And what about the Bayfront? Things are going on out there?
Yeah, lots of development for sure. Continues really, life sciences, biotech is coming in. They see a real opportunity being close to the airport, being close to the rail line. Anything, Broadway rail station will be coming back to weekday service with the electrification and with the Broadway, grade separation project completed. And so there's a huge opportunity. And talk about office and workspace walkable to transit, anything sort of that's within a half mile or a mile of Broadway station. So a lot of that development is happening in a very transit-oriented way, which is good. So there's a number of, I think there's over 1 million square foot of research and development and life sciences that's sort of in the pipeline. There's additional office space. And there's some really exciting work. We have visions for really improving the streetscape out there along Airport to make it more beautiful and to make it greener. So having green infrastructure, safer bike lanes, pedestrian scale, and really helping when you add more plantings and green infrastructure, it also helps with treating water pollution, and making sure that water is being recycled properly, and it will also help with flooding and sea level rise issues too. So
great.
Yeah, there's some good work and vision work that we're doing out there.
Okay, how about a quick update on Topgolf? I think they broke some ground over there.
They did. Construction has begun slowly but surely. It's been a while, and they say their vision is to complete construction by the end of 2024. It's a complicated development because it's sitting on top of a landfill. So I think if any development has some additional complications, we'll see how fast that goes up. But I know they're working hard and they're committed to doing the project.
What would be the end game on that, the end time?
To end of 2024 is when they envision,
but
it
a lot
could
going
go
on next year.
Yeah, it could be longer.
Okay.
So. Yeah, next year also starts the El Camino Real
I know.
rehab.
Oh, that'll be so interesting, boy. But you know what? It's needed.
We'll have to do another podcast on that.
Absolutely. Part 2, right.
Yes, we'll get Jennifer and Michael Brownrigg in here
great.
too. So.
Yeah.
Some of our task force members.
And now the hottest topic in Burlingame for the last couple of weeks, the blowers, the gas blowers or the electric. Where do we stand with blowing the leaves here? What's going to happen?
Well, I think...
Have we made a choice yet?
We haven't made an official choice, but we've directed staff to bring us back more information, and we really... Council said we want to learn more and hear about the pros and cons, and I think later this fall we're going to be deciding how to legislate on that.
Okay.
But I think there was definitely an interest to reduce the air pollution.
Great. Okay. So, Emily, we're done with the lob pitches now, okay? Now we're going to warm up a little bit and throw a few fastballs, but nothing that you can't hit, okay? So, last year, 2022, you ran for election to the U.S. House of Representatives.
I did.
Yep. Representing California's 15th Congressional District. Mm-hmm. And although you lost the primary, you collected 14% or 20,816 votes. To me, that's pretty impressive, okay?
Thank you, Mark.
Very impressive. What motivated you to make the decision to run for the House? That's a big step.
It is. I really wanted the job.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did. I thought I have loved my public service in Burlingame. It's been a privilege to see how you can shape communities through public policy. And I thought I had very different experience and very broad life experience to bring to bear on that job. I thought it's important to have more veterans in Congress. We're at an all-time low right now of people who have worn the uniform, who are making decisions about foreign policy and whether we go to war or not. Only 17% of the Congress has any military experience last year. We were at a low for women's representation in Congress with only 27% women. Jackie Spear was such a fierce, champion for issues that really make a difference. And I'm a believer. Look, I'm Catholic. I went to the University of Notre Dame, but one thing I put forth in that race that I felt very strongly about was women having the choice to have reproductive freedom. And I was talking about that way back in November compared to when the Supreme Court had some big decisions that were made in June. I think if there were more gender equity in Congress, that might have been legislated and solved many years ago. It just wasn't a priority. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think we got complacent. So I think in Congress, when, it takes so long to get seniority, you really can't go there and make an impact like you do at local government in 4 or 8 years. And so I looked at it and I said, you know what, that seat comes open every 20, maybe 30 years. I was 48, 47 years old. That's about the time, some other, leaders, you need 20, 25 years to get seniority in Congress. I said, my kids are older. They're going off to college. I'm going to run. I'm going to do what so many women who have been elected leaders have always encouraged people to stand up and run and be counted, and I'm glad I did.
You did that, excuse me, you did that while working full-time? Did you take a leave of absence from your job? Because that's a lot of campaigning. It's a lot going on.
Oh, it was exhausting. I actually, at the time, I was doing some contract work, and I had to resign from that contract work due to conflict of interest, because it was in a realm that would have been a conflict of interest with the seat.
Yeah.
So I was actually, when I declared my candidacy, I resigned from my day job at the time. So during that race from, mid-November through June, I was a full-time candidate, which is different than right now. I am working full-time at a nonprofit. But yeah, that was yes, it was full-time job to be a candidate for Congress.
The evening or the next day when the votes all came in and you realized you hadn't won, how was that feeling? What through your head?
Well, I really had hoped, and you don't run if you don't think you have a chance. That would be foolish. My strategy was I just needed to come in second in the primary. I knew I couldn't come in first in the primary. But I thought I had a good fighting chance to at least come in second. And once she got through the primary, first or second, from our data and polling, it would have been an extremely competitive race if I had made it through.
Well, I mean...
But I didn't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was, it was disappointing.
Sure.
Because you don't run and think you're going to lose. And it took, honestly, even though, it took some time to just process it. And yet, that weekend there was a lot going on with Moms Demand Action and more shootings. And, I still was out there at various community events supporting gun safety and women's right to choose. And sometimes you don't want to, after losing an election like that, sometimes the last thing you want to do is just face people. But I was out there at the community center when we did the ribbon cutting, and you just drive on just like you do. And
well, I think it's a great example for, I don't want to say not getting knocked down, but getting knocked down, but you got back up.
Well, thank you. You can't win if you're not willing to lose. Yeah. And there's so much at stake. I had very different experience in that race. Not less experience, just different life experience. Nobody else had served in the military. Nobody else had worked in the private sector, the nonprofit, had been a mom. Those are different experiences. And I think we need diverse legislators, but we need them at all levels of government. And I just was determined to keep on doing great work here in Burlingame. And I really just very quickly got on board with Congressman Mullin, because I think he's an outstanding human being, and he's always been a friend and a mentor. Before that race started, we gave each other a hug. He looked at me, he said, "I'm so proud of you for running, Emily." I said, "Kevin, I'm so proud of you for running. We're going to run a good, clean race, and we're going to talk about the issues." And we've always been friends.
And I see he's endorsed you for what we're going to talk about now, San Mateo County Supervisor. You're running for that, campaigning for that next November. Is that correct? 2024?
Actually, the election will be in March of 24, so it's just about 6 months away.
I better check my notes here. Okay.
I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be, and people, because California moved up the primary.
Okay.
And because it's a presidential year, so people aren't expecting it to come, because we've only done this, I think, once before, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, it's coming in March.
Okay, good. So the heat is on.
The heat is on, my friend.
All right, I've got a couple of questions for you. And this is for our listeners, because, first of all, a lot of folks don't even know what a county supervisor is, or what
a lot of my friends, yes,
or what they're responsible for. So can you take a couple of minutes?
Sure. Yeah. People are asking, what are you going to supervise?
Right.
What is this? What does the county even do? Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
The county does a lot of things that the city does. Like the city, it has a 5-member elected body. It's on a much bigger scale. So I'm running for District 1 seat, which is currently held by Burlingame resident Dave Pine, who's done an incredible job. And so this particular district runs from South San Francisco south to Burlingame, Hillsborough, a little bit of San Mateo Hills. So the county fixes potholes. It builds infrastructure. It oversees land use decisions for the unincorporated lands of San Mateo County, and we have some in Burlingame. Burlingame Hills actually does not belong to the city of Burlingame. Mm-hmm. Their legislative body is the County Board of Supervisors, so essentially their mayor is Dave Pine, so there's unincorporated lands. But the big difference, well, there's one other thing. The county oversees a park system, so in Burlingame we have about 100 acres of parks. The county oversees 16,000 acres of parks.
Wow.
And I am an outdoor enthusiast. I can't wait to, influence those. Those parks have been a lifeline for my family. But the big differences in the budget are that the county oversees the county health system, which includes the county hospital, the clinics, the healthcare of last resort for people who really need the help. It funds and oversees, it funds the justice system, the jails. And then it also funds and oversees the social safety net services. So all those federal funds that come in, those lifeline services, oversees the foster system, Veterans Affairs. These are a lot of areas I have a lot of passion behind. So compared to Burlingame, our budget's about, $150 million. The county has a $4.2 billion budget. So big responsibilities, really impacts people's lives. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't avail yourself to those supportive services, I can't imagine a world without them. So we need good people making those policy decisions.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the inspiration for running for San Mateo County Supervisor comes from what you've been doing and a passion for the county, for the cities, et cetera. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. To continue to grow and take all I've learned in what will be at the end of next year, 9 years in local government. I think that's great experience to go to the county. I have a lot of, in my day job, I work with people who really need supportive services, and I see how those services are effective, how they can be improved. I've been not only a parent, but a foster parent. I'm a veteran. I think I have a seat at the table. It's important to have a veteran, and Warren Slocum, who's the only veteran on the County Board of Supervisors, will be terming out this year too. Social safety net services impacted my family, kind of the trajectory of generations in my family have made a huge difference. I really believe in them, and they've got to be used wisely and allocated effectively. So there's a lot of passion behind those issues.
So is the county supervisor position a full-time paid position?
Yes, it is. Versus a city council position is really like, believe me, there have been years and many of us do give full-time hours to it, but it is not a full-time. City council is a very small stipend that doesn't even begin to cover what it costs to do the political activity.
At one time, there was
about $500 a month or something.
At one time, there was some health benefits, but I think that went away, didn't it?
You can choose health benefits, which are very generous, particularly if you have a partner that doesn't have health benefits. But the county supervisor is a full-time paid position, so it would be an opportunity for me to be fully dedicated as a public policy maker, and I would love to do the job, and I think I'm prepared for it. So.
Okay. Yeah. So what's something you learned from your campaign last year running for Congress that you're going to, you learned something there, you're going to take it to campaigning for supervisor?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's just so much you learn from mistakes, right? You learn from things you did well.
Do you have the same campaign manager?
I actually have. So there's different sort of terms. There's consulting teams that help do messaging and media, and then there's a manager. And I had a fantastic team in the congressional race. I ended up choosing a different consulting team for this county race that had more experience in San Mateo County specifically, as opposed to congressional experience. So have a great team there, and I do have a campaign manager who's on the ground with me here in Burlingame too.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm. All right, here's some questions I came upon from reading some articles in the San Mateo Daily Journal.
Sure. Heard of it.
And the Burlingame Voice. And a couple of folks, my advisory staff said, okay, Mark, let's ask Emily Beach a couple of these
Who's the advisory staff?
That's to be talked about off microphone, okay? Anyway, I'm going to start with a quote, if you don't mind, from San Mateo County Manager Mike Collegy, and I hope I
Callaghy. Yep.
Thank you, Callaghy. Quote me or quote him: "Information is power, and I understand the emotion around it. I expected it, and I want people to understand housing the homeless is the responsibility of everyone." Your thoughts on that quote?
Yeah, I think Mike Callaghy is a great man, a great leader, a compassionate leader. We are so lucky to have him as the county executive. And certainly what he's alluding to is the controversy in Millbrae right now.
Right.
With,
the La Quinta Hotel or Inn is going to be purchased. Is that correct?
Yes.
And used to house the homeless.
Yes.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around what that means. I think really the missed opportunity that the county missed is really deep community outreach to bring the community along and help them understand what permanent supportive housing is and the impact, weigh in, get some feedback. I think what I've heard, at least as I read the articles and listen to debates, is it felt sort of sprung on them. And, in things, change is hard in communities. And certainly when any issue related to housing gets people's attention. Having said all that, you're probably going to ask me my opinion on it. So, I think the county's vision to get to functional zero of eradicating homelessness is a compassionate and noble and ethical thing to do. And that means we need to find places where people experiencing homelessness can live. I do think there's part of the misconception is who is homeless? Who are these people? Mm-hmm. Certainly there are folks in Millbrae that have experienced when they go to their Millbrae Transit Hub, and there are folks with severe mental health challenges who don't want to receive services, and they are a category of very tough nut to crack when it comes to homeless. Some of them are veterans, which is tragic. They've served their country. Maybe some of their mental health challenges have resulted from what the country asked them to do. Yeah. There's also a huge amount of the homeless population that I serve in my day job that are people that are with children in our public schools. I know that in the elementary school where my kids attended here in Burlingame, there were unhoused kids that were living in cars and RVs. They are people working in our Safeways. They are folks that are couch surfing, that are hanging on by a thread, working multiple low-wage jobs, raising children in this county, providing essential services, working in the grocery stores, the drugstores, working in our restaurants, that have had maybe 2 tires blow out on their car, and that economic impact of a $500 purchase at Costco has put themselves in a place where they can't afford their rent. And there's where the social safety net comes in with emergency rental assistance. But if you got it once, it's very hard to get twice in 1 year. And then they find themselves living in a car. And permanent supportive housing is really folks that have had some triage, been vetted, and are they're willing and ready to receive supportive services, not only, healthcare, job support services from organizations like Job Train or Nova Works, other mental health support, dental support, who are getting their arms wrapped around them in the community, and they're going to have a long-term commitment to try to make it work and get the help they need. And I think that's a very noble pursuit. It's been very successful in Redwood City. We've had 2 hotels that have been very successful. There have been interim housing that has been extremely successful in former hotels, the 2 in Redwood City, but then also in Half Moon Bay, Redwood City, and San Mateo. And I think we can look to those examples to see that there's hope for making sure people are off the street.
That's great, because I was going to ask, is there any successful models that you can demonstrate for us? And you just answered that question. And I think it's so important. One step to taking care of homeless is make them homes. Let's find some shelter for them, right? Some real shelter, not some tents and
dignified shelter. And what the county's done in Redwood City, if you ever get a chance, you should. I can even, there's Life Moves. I was talking with them, and they're going to give a couple members of the staff in our city and our council a tour of their new navigation center in Redwood City. Dignified housing. That was built in a year. It was modular housing, but it gives a private restroom. It gives a place where if they have, sometimes folks on the streets, they don't want to go and get help if they have to leave their dog or cat behind, but they allow pets. They get dental support. They get food support. Then we can lift people up and give them a chance to catch their breath and get back into society.
Good. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you're big into public transportation.
Yes.
All right. So what ideas do you have for improving public transportation and reducing traffic congestion within the county?
Well, I've been a part of some really important things. It's been a privilege to serve on the board, and 2 years as chair of the County Transportation Authority. So we've allocated a ton of money for when cities put forth their ideas for projects that they want to sponsor. I think one of certainly keeping public transportation funded, it terrifies me right now that the cuts that may be coming if we don't have a more sustainable injection of funds to save really Caltrain service.
Are we talking
and BART service.
BART system and the buses and things like that?
Yeah.
Is that
actually
specifics?
Samtrans bus is fiscally healthier than just about any other public transit service right now. Caltrain, thank goodness we passed. You remember Measure RR a couple years ago? It was a sales tax to help Caltrain keep going, but because ridership has declined so much.
There's nobody on the train.
Exactly, on Caltrain. Samtrans is propped up because a lot of, quite frankly, lower income people continue to ride the bus. They can't really afford Caltrain, so the ridership isn't as strong. And Caltrain was always more of a commuter vehicle of choice for people who have a little bit, because the fares were higher. It was fare box recovery was a big part of how we paid for Caltrain. But a lot of those folks that were going downtown San Francisco, they've disappeared.
They're not going
or they're
anymore.
going back down. Right. So, and BART is the same way suffering. There was an injection of funds that the governor approved, but without more funds, I worry. It's kind of a chicken and the egg, right? If you take away transit systems, people will drive more. And if you don't invest in them, they will disappear. So you need to have frequent service so that people find it convenient. And you need to have, you have to subsidize it because otherwise we can't afford to keep it going. So I really worry about the public transportation system. I think one of the more hopeful things that, and it's been a privilege to be a part of it, controversial as it was, the express lanes on the highway are an interesting thing. You know how they have one of the lanes that's a pay-to-play lane?
Yes.
Now, everybody can ride for free if you carpool, a 3-person carpool. But you can have a discount if you have a 2-person carpool. But if you're a single occupancy driver during really high demand times, you're going to pay a freight charge. It's a pay-to-play. But what we've done is we've taken those revenues and have the opportunity to reinvest in transportation infrastructure and mode shift and equity programs. So that's a big mouthful. But right now, we have the first in the country that is being held up as a model throughout the United States of an express lane equity program that is helping subsidize low-income folks to get free Clipper cards, which are transit passes so they can ride Caltrain and afford it, and they can ride the bus system. And they can renew that $100 benefit every year, or they can choose a fast-track transponder that's preloaded one time. And 80% of low-income people are choosing the Clipper card. So we're getting people out of their automobiles and kind of taking some of those revenues into those programs that get people out of their automobiles and into transit.
Okay, so this express lane that we're talking about.
Is that super nerdy or what? I mean, like, get me going on transpo wonky stuff. And here we go. So.
I knew you had some expertise in transportation, but this express lane that we're talking about, what's the boundary here? I mean, does it stretch from South City to San Jose? Or
So this is a vision at the very highest levels of the state government, right? And the vision is to have express lanes that really ring around the bay so that it's not a section of roadway that ends when you hit 380 like it does right now. Eventually, the vision is regionally that the express lane will continue through San Francisco and throughout the 9-county Bay Area. And one of the big wins that San Mateo County did was to keep the rights of the ownership and the revenues here in our neck of the woods.
Wonderful.
That was a battle royale. I can tell you about that on another podcast, but I was honored to be a part of that, to make sure that we could have control, and that's why we created an equity program. So the express lanes started probably as late as 2015, 20 years ago. I can't take any credit for those, and I actually was pretty darn skeptical of the express lanes. But when you look at the data and the traffic analysis, if we hadn't built those express lanes, and if Assemblymember at the time, now current Congressman Kevin Mullin, hadn't gotten a line item written into SB1, that big legislative package that was passed, and gotten, I think, $200 million to build them, what our local roads would look like today without the express lanes, even post-pandemic, would have been a nightmare because people were just, 101 was dead stopped. So the choice was do nothing and have all our local roads infected with traffic, or build the express lanes and use pricing, demand pricing, to try to inspire people to carpool and do the right thing, or pay to play.
Yeah. Is it working?
Absolutely.
Great. Good.
Yeah, we didn't invent it, but it's using economics, right?
Yep.
The power of, just like when you charge more for parking, people park for shorter times and they turn over. If you charge if it's free, people will stay there all day. Economics.
For sure, yeah. That's okay. So this one came in from one of my consultants. Okay. How do you plan to support small businesses and promote economic growth across San Mateo County?
Well, my dad was a small business owner. My mom, a small business co-owner. We've done so much good work in Burlingame, and I can't take personal credit for it, but look at our thriving downtowns. And if you want to look at what small businesses, local businesses are thriving, name the best cities, the jewels, the downtowns you want to go to. I think Burlingame is hands down the top of the list, not just San Mateo County, but the entire peninsula.
Yeah.
So we've done it by being good partners to businesses. Now, I did push the envelope, and there were many restaurant owners that weren't too happy with Emily Beach when I was pushing for an accelerated minimum wage. But we also leaned in during the pandemic and said, let's open up and do outdoor dining. Let's continue that. And some of those same restaurant owners who were with pitchforks out at those accelerated minimum wage meeting came back 9 months later and said they had some of their strongest years ever. Thank you for the extended sidewalk time. We basically helped them expand their footprint when they needed it the most.
Yeah.
So we try to lean in partnership. We tried to absorb some of the cost of those outdoor dining and sidewalk spaces as much as possible. Tried to create opportunities where the private sector helps fund things like the downtown Burlingame improvements to make those sidewalks beautiful and the pavers and make the parking different. That just makes it such a pedestrian scale place. And listen to the business owners. And it's a give and take. It's a compromise. But I think I would definitely encourage, however we could, to have local business improvement districts do what they do, encourage and help the Chamber of Commerce really elevate the great work that they do, like here in the Burlingame SFO Chamber of Commerce, and support them. Yeah,
especially this last weekend. I think, to me, it seemed like it was well attended. The art on the avenue, activities they had. I don't know how you measure it, but it certainly seemed like there was a lot of folks there.
Yeah.
And a lot of out-of-town folks, so that was a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, things we can do in development, like community benefits and building a town square and all those things. So, if I'm county supervisor, I want to listen to the different cities along the way to see how the county can help create that similar vibrancy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have the San Mateo Daily Journal in front of me, and today's headline is San Bruno picks a pot shop. Okay, is this the first retail marijuana shop in San Mateo County?
No. I believe there's other communities. I shouldn't speak too soon, but I have on the tip of my tongue, but I don't want to state them wrong. But I think there's at least 2 others that I believe have retail, as well.
Obviously, San Bruno voted it in, which is fine. Mm-hmm. Do the county supervisors get involved in something like this?
Not in local land use. Yeah, no, that's a local city decision.
Okay.
I mean, I guess the county has land use authority in unincorporated lands, but most unincorporated lands don't have a lot of business development, right? There's more residential.
Okay.
Like, for example, in District 1, it's the Highlands, that's a residential area in San Mateo, or Burlingame Hills doesn't have retail. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So one other question I wanted to ask you about being a county supervisor, is it a requirement to attend city council meetings in different cities under your jurisdiction? You know what I mean?
I think it's good form to have consistent and constant communication flow with city councils and their elected leaders. And Supervisor Pine, I've always appreciated, would come and do updates from the county. He gave one not too long ago of key initiatives when the County Board of Supervisors set their goals for the year. He's currently serving as president of the Board of Supervisors this year. They rotate through, kind of like we rotate through as mayor. He also has a lot of passion behind children and families issues. So he came and did a report on childcare, the deficit we have in the county a number of years ago. When the county did a report, he comes and does updates on initiatives with One Shoreline and sea level rise issues, his sort of passion areas. So I've always appreciated that. And his staff is very present, and he's present whenever we have celebrations and things like that. So.
All right. Where are we headed with gas or electric appliances?
I hope we'll have more and more electric appliances. That's the direction we've got to go. Yeah. But I don't see anybody despite what may have been posted on blogs and such, I'm not aware of any council member, including myself, saying that we're going to come after your gas stove and make you rip it out. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. I mean, we need to, what we want to do is a new construction. We want to transition, so we're building less gas lines that PG&E has to maintain and move us towards more sustainable infrastructure.
Okay. All right.
But I'm not coming after your gas stove.
Good
Mark.
girl. Thank you. Thank you.
Although I'll tell you, I wish when I did my kitchen, I wish I had known about the new technology that's just, pretty amazing out there.
These modern kitchens are over the top. Yeah.
My gas stove is just, I've had a lot of maintenance on it too. Yeah.
All right. You and Gina Pappin have impressive endorsements, very impressive endorsements. How important is it for either one of you to get an endorsement from current incumbent Dave Pine?
Well, I think it's huge. If the incumbent looks at the candidates and then says, I share values, I want this work to continue and to have a new perspective and grow, I mean, I think it would be one of the greatest honors to have the endorsement of Supervisor Pine.
Is this something that Supervisor Pine is going to wait on? Or, I mean, when would an endorsement like that come down?
Well, you'll have to ask Supervisor Pine.
I just might. Okay, moving forward here. When you're not busy with city council or campaigning for San Mateo County Supervisor, you're a regional director for Job Train, a nonprofit organization. What is Job Train?
Job Train is an awesome nonprofit. It's been around since, we've been in Menlo Park for well over 50 years. And it's going through a lot of expansion. We help people who need to find, with rapid employment services, with jobs and skills training, and with supportive services so that they can move up the economic ladder. So we'll help anybody who walks in our door, but really our wheelhouse are low-income folks. Maybe they're making a minimum wage job. Maybe they're working 2 minimum wage jobs. and they really want more economic mobility, and they want skills training. And so we have a couple different pathways. We have no cost 11 to 13 week programs. We can put people in that qualify for them and help them get qualified to get in, whether it's carpentry programs so they can be qualified to get into a union apprenticeship program, medical assistant training program. So we opened our North County medical assistant training program in December. We've run we're starting our third cohort. These are folks that get an externship with Kaiser Permanente. Many of them are hired, so they're making significantly more money than a minimum wage job. IT, carpentry, nursing assistant, different career training programs at no cost. We also help with rapid employment services, and a lot of our clients come in, and before they can even look for a job, they need supportive services first. So they might need rental assistance, they might need mental health care, they might need, maybe they're suffering from domestic violence or they're unhoused, and we connect them with supportive services, and we're their coach side by side, and we help get them over the finish line.
Boy, great job, great organization.
Yeah, thank you. It's super empowering. It's helping people help themselves. And I am just honored to be the regional director for all of North County. So my employees, my team of employment specialists do the direct services. Sometimes I backfill and, help air traffic control. But my job is to oversee operations for all of North County. We're located right on Grand Avenue in South San Francisco at the Economic Advancement Center, which I'd love to tell you about as a vision of the city of South San Francisco. It's just amazing. It's like a community hub of nonprofit resources. And our clients span from South San Francisco, Daly City, San Bruno, as far south as Millbrae. We'll help anybody from Burlingame and San Mateo as well, but we're focused on North County all the way to the Brisbane line.
Thank you for that. That's great. What a great organization.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. It's pretty inspiring to be a part of, and to see. We just had a graduation of medical assistant training program, and it was one of the most inspiring evenings. It was awesome.
Okay, we're going to wind it up with a little bit of a shout out to your husband, Duff, and your teenage children, right?
Yeah.
You have a couple of kids, boys and girls, 2 boys, 2 girls.
I have an older daughter who just went off to college about 2 weeks ago, and my son is a junior in high school.
Great.
So they're awesome, and my husband is amazing. He puts up with all my shenanigans.
Well,
and is my biggest supporter and fan. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's a really great AYSO soccer coach and referee.
Terrific. Good.
Diehard community, different kind of community service, but he's amazing.
Good. Okay, so how do citizens get in touch with you for campaign donations, volunteering, or endorsements?
Well, that's a very nice shout out. Well, first things first, if they want to learn more about my our campaign for San Mateo County Supervisor, you can visit beachforsupervisor.com, and there's all sorts of contact information there. My email is emily@beachforsupervisor.com. But the campaign staff can help as well. If you're a constituent and you have official business that's not campaign related, because we can't talk politics on city government email, easy to find me on the City of Burlingame website, ebeach@burlingame.org. And my cell phone is my personal cell phone. It's posted everywhere on the City of Burlingame, and you can always give me a call. In fact, a call or a text sometimes is the fastest way to get me, because I have so many different emails right now. I don't even know which way is up. It's kind of complicated.
Great. Well, you're a very busy lady, that's for sure. Emily Beach, thank you for your service to the city, to our country. Thank you for being a guest tonight.
Mark, thank you for inviting me. It was a ton of fun to talk other than talking about my kids or my cat. Public policy and public service is my favorite thing to talk about. And you've given me a great opportunity to just have some fun with you tonight. So thanks for all you do to get the word out in Burlingame.
You got it, Emily. Thank
all right.
you.
See you again.
I'd like to thank Emily Beach, Burlingame City Councilwoman, for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Monday, August 28, 2023 at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.